Welcome to the Family Pictures Podcast. I'm Michael Branson Smith here with
Jim Groom.
And welcome DS106 in your DS106 summer camp. We are back with the community that Jim is part of with Reclaim Hosting, and I'm glad to be presenting another new series on episode 75 of the Family Pictures Podcast. We have left behind the high-minded worldly pictures of the international 90s that are small and lovely stories of families, and now we're going big. We're going nuclear. We're going back to the 80s. We're going to our wheelhouse where mediated paranoia lives. Jim Groom.
We're going to conservative 1984 Cold War America. Grab your guns, boys. It's time. Avenge me!
For Red Dawn. Yes, we are doing the John Milius film that is the product. And like this, what we do here, we actually do research into movies. This is, normally we just watch pictures as fans. Jim writes about them. I imagine myself as making them someday. But in the research of this film, what was a lot of fun was to find out, based on mostly this former producer, Peter Bart, who was in the room when decisions were being made about Red Dawn. And he goes on to become the editor-in-chief of Variety, which, if you don't know, is like the trade magazine of Hollywood to this day. And he tells us of how this lovely film was written by Kevin Reynolds, who was like in his early 30s. It was a nice, tiny, going to be artsy anti-war film that was in the vein of a loss of youth story and styled in the Lord of the Flies. But the Frank Yablans, who is the president of MGM at the time, and this is the end of MGM as an independent production company. It's about to be bought by Ted Turner's, TBS, and then it goes on to be bought by Amazon. So it's its last days of being an independent company. And he's like, I want my First Blood, right? I want my Rambo. I want my action, because this is the era of like learning how to make action movies. And First Blood, in a lot of ways, is kind of the prototype of the modern action movie. It's like story. And then it's like, like action, fight, action, set piece.
You give yourself stitches. You build crap. Perfect. It's the perfect movie.
And so instead of this small art house movie, Yablans is like, let's get that guy, John Milius, that guy who just finished Conan the Barbarian, which another classic. We could do that story someday if we want to get into the fantasy world. And, was of the new Hollywood generation, but infamously the conservative of the group, right? He's not, a Steven Spielberg or a Coppola, but he had co-written, Apocalypse Now, as well as, many other famous properties. He was part of everything. And so let's bring that guy in and let's turn this into a proper war movie.
Even Jeremiah Johnson, which we did on this podcast, right?
He wrote Jeremiah Johnson. Yeah. He's like a man he's a proper libertarian, if you will, of the day, right? He likes his guns. He likes his exotic. And that was apparently part of his contract, is they had to buy him his like exotic weapon of choice.
He got $1.2 million and weapon of choice. That's awesome.
What a maniac. And the funny thing is, he thought he was the maniac, but no, Yablans has on his, as president of MGM, has on his board the former Secretary of State for Ronald Reagan, Alexander Haig.
I had no idea before going into watching this movie that Alexander Haig was like the military consultant for Milius. Yes.
And so Yablans and Haig start to fantasize they're going to ride the Reagan like conservative revolution, and this is going to be a calling card for what it's like to be a real conservative American, and even Europeans would love it, which turns out to be completely wrong. This thing basically kind of bombs in the theaters because it's a much more liberal media at the time, and there is no Fox News to champion a picture like this and say like it's
Exactly.
what we all should be. And infamously, Peter Bart later writes on about how this was this jingoish piece of crap, right? Or a paranoia driven film. And apparently it was inspired Timothy McVeigh, and he writes a column about that many years later.
Jesus. Now,
I know.
one piece there too that's interesting is from what I read, Milius was even like, who's a conservative
Yeah.
libertarian nutball, was like,
Yeah.
and then Haig came in, and it became a piece of propaganda. I was like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. And the great thing is like Peter Bart's like, ha ha, the irony of that, like you kettle calling black, it's just ridiculous. And so there were other funky things. And so, he wanted this movie and it's supposed to be this big, invasion film. And it was 83 and they wanted it as to be their main vehicle of the summer of 84, their blockbuster. And it was just like ridiculous timeline. And so, they were having problems. The Pentagon didn't want to supply them with like military equipment and flyovers because they read the script and they're like, fuck you. We're not like these wimpy asses that could be invaded through the middle of America from Mexico. That would never happen. It's
Divided
like,
America? It's like, that's it.
yeah.
No, it's a division of America not supporting you.
Yeah. And meanwhile, like in the research of this, I read, and Peter Bart went on to write a number of books, and it was this book, Fade Out, the Calamitous Final Days of MGM, that he wrote, where all of this is in there. And it takes up about like only 7 pages in the whole book. And it's a fun read because they all sound like this. This is also infamously known as like cocaine is driving Hollywood, And I'm not saying these individuals per se, but this is the era of like we want big, like sexy stars with big bodies like Stallone and Schwarzenegger, and we want like action is of the moment. And so what's interesting is this film becomes like kind of like your classic, disaster of a production in some ways. There's a wonderful story of they had hired parachutists to do the invasion, which is part of the opening sequence of the film. And they had both like former professional military and these like club parachutists, and the club parachutists apparently were a bunch of drunks, and they were like getting injured and like hanging from telephone poles and shit. and they, Milius fired them and they went to the press, and then suddenly there was this alarm bells about safety because the Twilight Zone disaster with like the helicopter had happened recently.
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah.
And so it went from being this massive invasion film to more of like a survivorist film, which is ultimately large credit to Milius. There's like cool set pieces in this film, which actually don't drive much of what we're interested in for this podcast. But it is like the opening sequence of the parachutist is because of it's been reduced. And that's that classic, like you have to do with what you have. And it's kind of incredible.
It's true. And actually, I heard a kind of production. It's part of this. I have this 4K Ultra HD version of Red Dawn because I definitely am a fan. And there's a little featurette called A Look Back at Red Dawn, and they speak with the production designer Jackson DeGovia, I think you pronounce his name, and he was saying like they only had 4 tanks. And so like they had to constantly rework, repaint. And I love it because it's very Bava-esque. Like they did so much to create this sense of an invaded world with, from what all accounts, the production design says, very little. They never made a deal with the military. The military never gave them anything. So they were just basically creating this world very effectively, like you said, through bringing things back, through not trying to go the whole kind of, there was a couple of good explosions and stuff, but it was really a DIY given the kind of scale it was trying to do.
Yeah, and it's not, this is a pre-CGI era too, as well, for the most part. And so there is this no big wide expanse shot of massive armaments coming at one another. And it's reduced through a couple of explanatory moments of like what happened.
Yeah.
Instead.
And I did say DIY I just want to clarify. That means do yourself in, not do it
DIY, right?
DIY.
and
Anyway,
so and so there is this little side note where I have to give, like, why
please,
does MBS make
why?
Jim Groom tell the story
Why?
of Red Dawn and the fantasy of how we can be prepared for nuclear war?
Especially
And
right
this is
now in America. Like, it's an interesting time to talk
it
about
is
Red Dawn.
because there is no START treaty yet for AI that's going to take us all down, right? It's like, where's our START treaty to prevent the AI takeover, which might feature into this series.
And we are standing alone in relationship to the decline of NATO, but not for the reasons this film thought.
Right, right. And so, this was something that was introduced briefly in the wildlife podcast, and I compared my best friend at the time when I was 13. When this film came out, I had just turned 13. I was about to go into 8th grade, and it was the peak of when my friend Chris Hall and I were obsessed with all things military, playing war, dressing for war, preparing for war. And I was like the sidekick to Chris Hall, who had the cool dad who was in the Secret Service and who was state police, and he hunted, and they had a gun closet in their basement that was filled with weapons, and I was the one who wanted to be part of all that stuff. And we were also in Boy Scouts, and that fed right into it. And this whole idea of, like, we're going to be prepared by fathers of boys and learn the skills of the outdoors and survivalism, self-reliance. And Chris Hall's
Boy
dad
Scouts?
was the
Is
coolest of all of them. That
is Boy
paramilitary organization, right?
Scouts well done.
Eagle Scout.
Exactly.
And Chris's dad was the coolest because he was the one who told dirty jokes and played cards with us, and we crowd into a single tent. And I remember an adult from a nearby campsite compared to, like, rustle on our tent and say, "What's going on in there?" And he opened it up, and Mr. Hall was in there, and we just laugh and laugh and laugh because he'd had to eat crow that there was actually adults supervising us. And Jim, we were obsessed with playing war. We would, like, wear camouflage and have face paint and ferns sticking out of our clothes and hats and military flashlights, canteens, utility belts and boots. And we battle exercised, and we didn't have paint guns yet. They didn't really, paintball guns. So we used these toy air pellet guns called Zebra 2s. And I actually found one on eBay. It's like $190 to buy one, you know?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And we would just get on our, like, janky 3-speeds and dirt bikes, and we'd all ride out to this swampy stretch of woods, and we just split into teams and do battle rounds. And one particular day, 4 kids went out first, and everybody else was to come in and, go into their ambush. And they had literally dug holes and constructed trapdoor roofs, almost exactly like the Wolverines do in the first ambush, during the tank unit trap that they set. And we were just over the top. Like, we were 12 and 13-year-old kids masquerading as commandos in this, like, tiny suburban town, and we were ridiculous. And,
But
and
let me ask you. Okay, go ahead. I don't want to.
no, you go ahead. No, you asked me. It's good. I'm going to.
No,
I
I
have
love it.
more.
But let me ask you, like, how much of this is also the context of all we had on, come late 70s through the 80s? I mean, one of the producers of Uncommon Valor actually comes to produce Red Dawn. Like, Vietnam and America making sense of
Yeah,
Vietnam, a war that we want to believe we won based on all these movies, but we didn't.
yeah.
There's some of that. Like, there's not only this war games and reliving Vietnam, but also that doubt that Red Dawn introduces is like, oh, wait, we could lose. We've actually
Well,
lost.
Well, I remember in college writing a paper about, this era of film about reclaiming that
Yeah,
loss,
totally.
and trying to showcase ourselves as the strong militaristic nation that we continue to be to this day, even if we are running out of weapons. And so Chris and I were obsessed with preparing, and we would do things where we would go out in these evening sorties into the woods, and we used to target our local, like, fancy country club that had this wide open field for the driving range that sat just below the main parking lot.
Did you
And
take out the golfers?
no, we would, we would, we were just like nerds. We were like, Friday night, we would go out and ditch our bikes between the cul-de-sac behind this cul-de-sac behind the club and go and low crawl into the grass searching for golf balls that had gone too far down for the range carts. And we would imagine this like stealth exercise we were performing, and cars would pull in and out in their fancy stupid yuppie outfits and BMWs, and they would scan us with their headlights like they were searching for us below.
They would say,
And
"Who are
we
those lowlifes in the grass over there stealing our golf balls?"
No, Jim, they never saw us. They couldn't see us.
You think? Just
Yeah.
ignore those two. They're playing war games.
No, we were well camouflaged. It was dark and you could not see us.
You're
And we
still
got
standing by
and we
it.
stole hundreds of golf balls this way. And we would ride home madly. And I had these baskets in the back of my 3-speed that were used from like newspapers that I delivered. And they would just clatter like crazy. And we thought
Can
we
I
were
ask
like
you a question?
completely concealed with our camouflage. Yeah.
What did you do with the golf balls? Did you sell them?
No, that would have been smart. We weren't business oriented. What did we do with them? We ended up like, um, we would we didn't
Michael,
play
where are
golf.
all these golf balls coming from?
I don't remember. I don't know if we gave them to his dad or what, but this was our obsession. We thought like in one night, like there was this like big flash at the end of my driveway, and we thought like, okay, it's happening now. We're ready. All these years we'd spent getting ready for war, it was about to start, and we actually thought we were ready. And that's one of the big themes of this film. And this is the first of this imagining of preparation of, nuclear war and the impossibility of the words of Armageddon, like ICBMs and Star Wars and START treaties and megatons and all the language of that era that like was incomprehensible and inaccessible. But this film says like, yeah, we lobbed a couple nukes at one another, or maybe like we killed 400 million Chinese.
Yeah, that's
But
right. 600,000.
it used to. I thought there was a billion.
I thought there
And
was a billion. There used to be.
but now it's all conventional, and so what we learned from our fathers could be used, and that's very much what this
So I think
this
there was a
story is
zeitgeist
about.
in the 80s too, because my brother, in the late 70s, early 80s, built underground tunnels in our backyard. So he literally completely built up our backyard and then went over them with plywood and put, flashlights in the wall. And so kids would come from around the neighborhood and climb underneath our backyard with plywood and dirt. And it was a complete, like, people could have died. The police came. They were like, "You got to shut this down." And there was another time where we had a kennel for a dog, and we would get the dog out of the kennel, and my older brother would take me and my friends in the kennel and would whip us with sticker bushes as if we were in like Vietnamese prison camps. And so like this was something of the mindset in the late 70s and early 80s of the Cold War and of that kind of, the long shadow of the Vietnam War. Because not only were there obviously movies, but these were also uncles, fathers, brothers who were in that war. And that was felt throughout our families. Like that was a kind of question, like people were really in that PTSD trying to not only culturally understand it under the Reagan era, but also trying to understand it on a very personal level.
Yeah. And I think that it affected kind of the way that we related with everyday life at that time. It was surprising how to us, this movie was a manual, right? We thought like, exactly. And, the film opens with this story of a calm, normal Midwestern town. It's sleepy downtown. It hasn't been overtaken by Strip Mall USA yet. It's got kids going with their crossing guard, and Jed and Matt, played by Patrick Swayze and Charlie Sheen, talking about their high school football, proudest and worst moments, and making fun of one another. But and we have the classroom, and we have the teacher who's telling the story of the invasion of the Mongols right as the Russians and Cubans are parachuting in.
they would work themselves up into such a frenzy. And then, talking about
When the killing would start, it would go for days,
the
for
beginning
weeks,
of this movie
even months.
is amazing. The propaganda of the perfect American town, going to the
Yeah.
perfect high school, and they're
Yep.
talking about their football game. They go into class, they're just regular kids, and then
Yep.
boom, everything changes. It's
Bum, bum, bum,
amazing.
bum, bum. Mr. What is this? Mr. Cheese, not Cheese Whiz. I want to call him Cheese Whiz. Cheesedale.
Cheese whiz.
It's Cheesedale. I wish they had Cheese Whiz. That would have been a great little addition. And so it's ensuing chaos. But what's important is Jed is immediately aware of the situation and immediately drives back to get his brother, and he gets 4 other boys, and the 6 of them immediately head out of town, and they hit one of the boys' father's like gas station, but his gas station is also like a bait and tackle camping supplies and gun supplies store, right? Because this is a good Midwestern gas station. You can fill it up and buy a box of ammo, right?
A lot of Campbell's soup, which is great for them.
Yep. And, cases of Coke. And this is the first, artifact of, fathers having showcased they had been readying their children for this inevitability, right? And they immediately fill sleeping bags with all this stuff, guns and knives and soup and everything. And they immediately take off. And of course, it's a truck, right? It has to be a nice big Ford
Chevy Cheyenne.
Yeah. Oh, good job.
A version of like a custom deluxe, but it's the
yeah.
It's beautiful.
And this is the beginning of like, it's no longer the abstraction, it's the literal. Like the parents are immediately gone. He says, Mr. Morris tells his son goodbye. It says, don't come back. I'll come get you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's never
literally like you're no longer with parents. You're on your own. You went from high school kid to now soldier, essentially.
And at the same time, as all this is happening, said Jed is immediately like, we're going to the mountains. And we also learned through Jed that he and his brother have been prepared for many, many, many years by their father, Tom, played by the incredible Harry Dean Stanton.
Harry Dean Stanton. What a year 1984 was Harry Dean Stanton. Me and Michael looked it up before the podcast. Repo Man.
Yeah.
Red Dawn. And of course, the amazing Paris, Texas. Let's all give a hand to Harry Dean Stanton. He's the best.
And so this is this idea that they have children that have grown up and been brought up the right way, boys in particular, of how to live in this inevitability. And, it immediately dovetails into what does this mean for this group, where when they arrive at this camp that is just being set up and they're all like, what do we do? And Danny's like, what am I going to do? I got to go back where my parents are going to be looking for me. I need to know.
Listen, Danny.
And then you have Daryl, who's like, well, I'm the former student and his dad's the mayor, which is awesome. Is like, I'm the student body president and I think we should have a vote on what we're going to do. I think we should go back. And this is where Jed like says, fuck you, sit down. We're not going anywhere. This is World War III. People are getting killed down there.
You know what this is? It's Patrick Swayze at his best.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He's amazing.
But it's the beginning of like, at a time in times of war and crisis, we discard any form of government and the value of government. And we need a good, strong paternal leader who's going to tell us what to do and be kind of a bully ultimately. And we're going to kind of be talking about Patrick Swayze's transformation quite a bit. And as soon as everybody accepts it, he wraps his arms around them and he says, come on over and get warm once they accept his authority. Right.
Exactly. Welcome to the family.
Yeah. And so, what turns into, and it's kind of funny because we've done this series, the Frontier Family series, and this becomes almost like a frontier family of boys because a large part of the beginning of this is just them surviving. They're not guerrillas yet. And, they're learning the waves of the woods, and Jed and with his brother Matt are teaching Robert in particular, played by C. Thomas Howell, how to hunt. And there's this incredible scene where he has his first kill
Yeah.
and they teach him the ways. It's like our father taught us that when you do this, you have to drink the blood of this deer, and it's going to change you. Once you do that, Robert, you'll never be the same. And it's true. He's never the fucking
He
same. And I
does.
think
Yeah.
it's
He
not so
becomes
it's
a
not so
psycho
bad.
killer.
It's not so bad.
No.
Jim, it's not so bad.
And like you said earlier, he's got the Star Wars classic cap turned
Yeah.
up. I mean, it is also such a great relic of the moment. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
beautiful.
But the idea is like this knowledge comes back from their parents and their fathers' fathers, and they even reach all the way back to like indigenous survival knowledge. He's like, this don't shoot twice because they'll be able to find you. Like it's like something they learned from the Blackfeet, and there's references also to Teddy Roosevelt throughout this film, actually through like statues and plaques and stuff like that. And Robert is now part of the tribe, and this tribe is their transformation into no longer being just survivalists. They're going to become the Wolverines. Like they're going to become the gorillas that they are. And the trigger turns out to be Matt's witnessing the execution of no, I'm jumping ahead. They have the Russian tourists show up, and they kind of basically botch, staying away from them and end up killing them all. And that leads to the execution by Colonel Bello, the Cuban, kind of commander of the occupied Calumet town.
Of all of their parents or all of their
Yeah.
relations, right? Like, so they
Yeah.
stand them up and they start singing the patriotic songs, and then
Yeah. Oh, beautiful.
they just get
Faithful
mowed
sky.
down. And this movie is somewhat relentless too. Like there are moments like the mowing down of the parents, or even in the beginning when the parachuters came into the school, they would shoot up the schoolroom and there'd be one
Yep.
kid left in the
Yeah.
class shot in the head.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, like from the moment you knew this was going to be a no holds barred movie. And
Right.
in some ways it is. Like one of the greatest moments in the movie is Daryl, Jed, played by Patrick Swayze, comes up to a car where they finally kind of get these Russian tourists. And there's one kid who's in the car and he's kind of shaking because he's been shot and they're going to finish him off. And there's that moment between Jed and this Russian soldier where they're both just kids. And
Yeah.
they're
He's such a
scared,
baby faced kid. Yeah.
and it's like almost like that Sting song from the 80s, right? The Russians love their children too. Like the whole idea that, like these are just people. And like that's where Millie was like, could we probably get this in at least? And Alexander Haig was like, cut it. No way. They're monsters.
Yeah. There is another scene where like Tony like bombs one of the buildings in town, and there's a Russian soldier like, "Can I get a medic? Help! Help!" Like they're trying to humanize briefly, however briefly, the Russians. But this is like jumping ahead because one of the kind of, I think, the pivotal, most important scenes of the film is when the boys are kind of running low on rations. Like they've been hunting deer, and it's like they've got meat, but they're running out of soup, and so the starch is getting slim to none. And so they decide to go into town, and they ditch their weapons, and it's just Matt and Jed and Robert. And you get a sense like Robert is the one that they trust the most in this regard, and they leave behind Arturo, Danny, and Daryl. And they and they learn that their fathers, or many of the fathers, they're troublemakers, or what's the way that the mayor puts them? It's like, well, there's some in this town that don't just follow. What is that? It's such a great quote. If I can find it, it'll be really hard.
And the Cuban or the Nicaraguan,
Yeah.
the Cuban leader.
Oh, what a shepherd you are.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, it's so funny.
The community's lucky to have you.
This is yeah.
You're throwing them under the bus. It's just
yeah. And so, we'll stop that. But what's important is they learn that many of the fathers have been shoved into a re-education camp, which is built out of a drive-in, which is kind of amazing, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's this big open space that's been fenced in, and not only are they Are they just like, being imprisoned? But it's a re-education camp. And over the PA, there's like, America is a whorehouse where the revolutionary ideals of your forefathers are corrupted and sold in alleys by vendors of capitalism. You grow fat on the flesh of freedom fighters. It's just,
Hmm.
it's, and
Interesting.
it's a drive-in. And so it's like 24/7 projecting these like pieces of propaganda in front of them. Right.
Oh, yeah, and
You know,
even the way they redo the town,
yeah.
right? There's Andrei Rublev playing in the local theater, and then there's all the socialist, communist, propaganda, which seems so fun to have been made, and, like,
Yeah.
the town really
Oh, and they're
transformed.
burning books.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's really well done, like, I mean, I
Yeah.
know the budget exploded and went far over, but even the casting director was saying, like, it was a relatively small budget for trying to make a big
Mhm.
action movie, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And so this is where, Jed and Matt, basically find their father, Tom, played by Harry Dean Stanton. This is the only time Dean Stanton appears in the picture. And the first thing he gets brought over by two men, and he's being like basically propped up, and his
Yeah.
face is bloody, and he's been through the ringer already. And he says, "Boys, let me just stand there. Let me see you. Let me get a look at you." Like he's just like, no, like hellos or anything like that. It's just like, let me see you, and I'm gonna read you what
Please.
this is
I
about.
wish
And he
read it loud
basically,
and proud.
yeah, don't talk, don't say anything. Let me look at you. I was tough on both of you. I did things that made you hate me sometimes, but you understand now, don't you? It doesn't matter now, one way or another, one reason or another, it's all gone. We're all gone. It's just like so fucking bleak. But it's basically, it's like this righteousness of a probably a really harsh, probably abusive father, right? It's a justification for this way of parenting.
Exactly. I mean, and it's like, wow, do you think there are really people who parented or still parent towards the end? I mean, this is the end of times. We're talking about nuclear 80s. That's gonna be our series for the next 5 films.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, I bet you there are people. I mean, there are survivors, right? I
absolutely.
mean, this is a
Yeah, there's
mindset.
survivalists, there's like off the gridders, there's libertarians, there's all sorts of crazy stuff out there where people like don't that believe you're best if you live outside of the norms of government and society and are raising yourself for an inevitable future of civil war, for example, right? It's like this civil war is around the corner. It's going to happen. Is the vein right now? I think, right?
Yeah, totally.
And so it's in this context, he's basically saying like, he's taught them right, to withstand fear and pain and deprivation, and violence. You're ready for it. But at the same time, he briefly becomes a father again. He's like, I remember when you guys were so damn little. And
Yes.
Jed responds, it's like, I remember it all, Dad. But this tenderness is very brief, and he immediately reminds us, like, well, I'm not going to be there anymore, and you're going to need to pick yourself up and count on each other as brothers and take care of one another. And so the idea is, and then there's the message, which is, don't ever cry for me, because they're weeping. You have both right now. They're weeping, Jed and Matt, and even Robert. They're just like weeping because they've asked. Robert's asked us like, "Have you seen my dad, Mr. Morris?" And they're like, "I don't know, but I'll go look for him." And he never shows up. And we later
My
learn that
dad
he,
there? I don't know, son.
yeah,
It says, and like it must be stated, Harry Dean Stanton is like 5 minutes, no, maybe 3 minutes in this film,
yeah,
and he
yeah.
absolutely makes it.
He
Like
steals the whole show. Yeah,
frames the whole movie, and he gives us like our whole frame for this podcast. It's so
correct.
amazing. Like rewatching
Yeah,
it, I was like, oh my God, Harry Dean Stanton, fucking genius.
yeah. And this idea of the message of don't cry for me, is like, he's literally like, never again, not once in your life, ever cry for me again, is this idea. It's like, I need you to turn your grief into something useful, right? I need you to turn it into violence, but most importantly, vengeance, right?
Exactly. It's the perfect 80 movie theme in America. Vengeance, picking up where Death Wish
Yeah.
left off in the 70s. It's like, avenge me.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Boys, avenge me. And it's Harry Dean Stanton. And it's just like it echoes through the theater at the time. And you're like, yeah, let those little fuckers, they're going to kick some Russian ass, right?
Exactly. And that was real. Like, it sounds funny in retrospect, but it was real. One of the producers, as again, I was watching that featurette, one of the producers is like, when, Jed or um, Swayze has that Russian in his sights and he's having trouble and he's kind of trembling because the idea is he's going to kill him. Someone in the theater screams out, "Kill that fucking Russian." And you're like, what? Like, it's supposed to be a moment of introspection. And that's
Yeah.
the problem with this film. It's
Yeah.
not. It's a
No,
moment
it's
of
not.
rah, 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 fucking patriotism, right? Like,
Yeah.
bring it to the Russians. It's like out of control. Any message there is lost for your point of
Mhm.
pure and utter vengeance.
Yeah, and ultimately the remainder of the film are the consequences of the kids obeying him, right? Because Jed he tries to literally personify his father soon enough. Because after the parents, his father, like, because Matt witnesses the execution after the Russian tourists are killed, and the response is to do a firing line of a bunch of men from the re-education camp, including Harry Dean Stanton's character Tom, as well as Arturo's father, who's been forced to dig the grave of one of the Russian soldiers that they're burying. So it's a funeral for the three Russians, and in honoring that funeral, they do a firing line. And Matt witnesses this in his camouflage, like he's got his straw and everything. And this leads to the fireplace scene afterward, where everybody's weeping, and Jed's like, "Don't cry," and he grabs poor Danny, and he manhandles him, and it says like, "Let it turn to something else." And that's what we've titled this episode.
Let it turn. It's such a great scene.
Yeah.
Let it turn. Refocus your anger. Take your vengeance. Get a commie for mommy. Like, it's just all there.
Yeah, and so Jed is trying his best to personify and continue this lesson through these children, if you will. But preceding this,
there is another scene. So
yeah, we're missing the visit, which is important. Is like, what are they fighting for to preserve?
exactly,
Right?
good call.
Yeah,
So
and
the
so
scene is, I'll just do it for a second.
you take over.
You're the genius here. I'm just the good looks of this podcast. Hello. So the thing is right after they meet with their dad, and the dad gives them the "Avenge Me, boys," they go, next stop is to the home. And it's this kind of like pioneering home out of a Western, right? And they come, and actually the guy who plays the father is Ben Johnson, who is one of the greats of American Westerns, right? He was considered by many the greatest horseback rider of that era. He was just a brilliant horseback rider, and he was known. One of his more famous ones, he was in many, but my favorite is the Wild Bunch. He's just genius. So him being the one who sits down on the chair as the father of the America that's left, telling them, "Boys, it's World War III." Right?
Yeah.
Like, you got to stay up there. You're fighting the good fight, who kind of reinforces like what we have here, me and my wife, which seems that's all that left of America, is what you actually are fighting for.
Yeah, and it's this amazing space too, because the men sit around the hearth while Mrs. Mason, because it's Jack Mason, Mr. and Mrs. Mason, living somehow like untouched by the war so far in this like cabin on this farmland. And she brings soup and bread, and the men sit by the hearth, and he gives the story. And this is one of the two moments where we learn about like how the war is going. We get a war report, if you will, and he gives them a radio, he gives them a bottle of whiskey, and and this is the idea, is like he's this other representation, like this containment of this space is what they're trying to preserve of America. This idea of family, of resilience, homesteading, right? And it's the frontier returns. And there's a much later scene in December where they return, and visit. And it's literally like fucking Christmas in there. It's like, they have decorations up, and, they get another update about the war, and they're preserving this tiny world. But my favorite part of is towards the end of the scene where they literally gift the boys. No, there's more to it. I forgot. They pass on a pair of heirlooms, which happen to be the two women, the granddaughters of Mr. Mason, played by Leah Thompson and Jennifer Grey, who aren't given a ton to do other than look really fucking awesome shooting giant weapons.
Exactly. And Leah Thompson does have a kind of burgeoning relationship, but they said that they cut out the scene she had with Powers Booth, who's the soldier that comes down, which was a really compelling, like love scene, and they
Yeah.
cut it. And same with Jennifer Grey. She was supposed to have a love
Yeah.
scene, but for whatever reason, budgets, a lot of their significant scenes were cut.
They shot it, but they just didn't work. Like there's a story, and it's really kind of ironic because it's between Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey as like kind of a mini love interest plot. And Patrick Swayze's so freaked out about it, he like gets drunk, she gets stoned, and in the shooting of it, it's like a fucking disaster. So they have to cut it, and then it's just never alluded to. There's like a brief flirtatious moment in a much later scene, but that's it. And
But
so
then they come back for Dirty Dancing.
yeah, exactly. That's what's so ironic. And she was really reticent about that. That would be a fun family pictures podcast too.
It's
I mean,
another one.
and the families going to summer camp together is like amazing.
Summer camp would be a good one, actually, just in general, summer camp.
Yeah. And so
Let's run on DS-106 summer camp, actually.
So he passes them on like objects to be protected, though, right? Initially,
Totally.
they are, and as part of this, and this is the inheritance that Mr. Mason is passing on to the Eckerts, and you get a sense that there's a long history between these families. They're trying to like represent the Eckerts and the Masons of like, we've been here for like 100 fucking years, because it's like the last thing he gives him is like, oh, I got a box of ammo for you for your granddaddy's gun. Like he knows his fucking grandfather's gun, that he knows Jed's gonna have. And so it is a history to be woven through of how men, teach their sons, and their grandfathers have taught their fathers to be men, and how to raise a family and how to be the protectors. And the Masons represent what they're supposed to be protecting. But the daughters, what do the daughters represent?
The daughters represent, I mean, when they bring them back finally to camp, it's like, hey, do the dishes. And this is one of the great scenes. And Leah Thompson is really convincing. She's like, fuck you. And like throws it back at, Charlie Sheen is like, I'm not doing the dishes. And it's a really great scene because she's like on him. Like, what is it? That's who you think we are? That's what you think you do? And you could see Charlie Sheen in that scene just getting so mad because everything he's kind of, the idea is being challenged because like, this is war, right? Like some of those narratives of what was coming before are going to give way here.
Yeah. And the idea of like woman is just homemaker is like bullshit, right? They're like, fuck off. And there's this, Tony is like, you're describing how like Matt, who's played by Charlie Sheen, is like, what the fuck did I do? And then Tony's just like, what you did was wrong. And the dialogue here's a little clunky, and there's a lot of clunky dialogue here where it's just like there's a lot of pronouncements, if you will, that are kind of simplistic. But we take them for what they are in this moment. And soon enough, Tony and Erica are fighting too.
Exactly.
Like, Erica's weapon of choice is this massive, like Gatling's gun styled weapon that's like got a tripod and shit. And it's amazing, and she's wearing the gorilla beret soon enough.
And there's a scene when they're actually getting the Russian tourists where Leah Thompson has this AK-47 that she can't even control, and she's trying to shoot the guy. And it's like, there's some interesting moments with the weapons, but they become actually, and then at some point they become really great decoys, and they become part of this guerrilla outfit,
Yeah. And this message as soon as like no one can go home, right? Because like once the Russian soldiers have been killed, Jed gets it, like this is the end of being kids, like we will forever be hunted. And it also is this moment of when we realize Robert is fully assimilated too, because Arturo Danny is trying to like proclaim when those the Russians are first killed, and it's like they were people. I love Danny. It's like, they were just people. And Robert's like, yeah, so was my dad, because they've already been, the execution's already happened. And because and just to be say that he's Robert's father, Mr. Morris, was executed. He wasn't killed in the fire line. He was executed as being an aide to guerrillas, right? By giving all the supplies, the camping supplies in the opening scene to the six boys as they headed to the mountains. And there's this wonderful, like, because Mr. Mason tells this story to them, and this is when Robert learns his father's been murdered. And Jed's like, we weren't gorillas, we're just a bunch of kids. He was just trying to help us. And like, he's still at this moment early on, Jed's still trying to hold on to his youthful identity, before they've gone full gorilla.
Yeah,
But Robert hasn't.
no,
Yeah, go ahead.
no, but I mean, and it's interesting too, because what becomes the mascot? What is the mascot of their high school and their kind of idea of football as they start to form this gorilla outfit, as they move from, we're not gorillas to, almost embracing that identity, and then realizing
Mhm.
if there's no going back, then there's only one solution. We got to fight the resistance, right? We're going to become part of it. And they start to transform that high school mascot into their identity, which is the famous Wolverines. And what
Yeah,
I love in this movie is, in some of the featurettes I was watching, it's like Wolverine is the perfect animal, right?
yeah,
Like when you think about what it represents as a North American kind of mammal that's a full badass and pound for pound, the most ferocious of its kind. And the movie kind of like plays with that. But I think the development of the Wolverines as a kind of identity for this band is one of the most powerful thing this film does.
yeah. And there's some other kind of interesting hidden kind of libertarian storytelling going on here too, because I've already alluded to like Jed like pushing out any notion of democratic society remaining. It's like no, the film replaces that. There's going to be a strongman patriarch, and there's this other one that's wonderful when Colonel Bello, who's the Cuban commander of the occupation of Calumet, in this early scene, he they're being there's like an aerial assault going on at night, and they're just like, he's like barking out commands, but one of his commands is to tell them to go to the local sporting goods store and find this particular form which has all the names of the people that own guns, right? And the idea is that he can now, these are the ones that are going to be all the dads are going to shove in the re-education camp, because they know they're the ones that are agitators because they're gun owners. And this is this whole man as, once the state knows who owns guns, then the enemy can know it too. It's that kind of messaging of the film going on there. But we also have the super ineffectual Mayor Bates, who's Daryl's dad. And he's literally presented as like a fop, when he's forced to witness the execution of his citizens by firing squad. He's wearing this like 80s huge bright tan rain jacket of a businessman.
Exactly. And I'll tell you, the other thing that's a bit of a ineffectual element in this film, in terms of industrial or institutional, is the U.S. military. There's only one time they really show up, and it's when the kids can escape to the mountains in the beginning.
Yeah.
Other
Mhm.
than the U.S. military is absent. Like, this is a story about full occupation, and you don't know what the hell's going on over there, right? Like, you hear stories about it, there's a sense, but this does a really good job as a movie of isolating that. And the U.S. military is effectively ineffectual.
Right. And which is kind of funny, because the Powers Booth character played as Colonel Tanner, who's like U.S. Air Force, who was in a dogfight, and they're like, how'd you get shot down? I was like, and he's like, well, it was 5-on-1 and I got 4. and and briefly becomes this kind of, he becomes a bit of a paternal figure, in a sense that he's an older person. He's like this ragtag. It's like, early bird gets the worm, sir. And they like take him on like one of their raids, and they attack like a column at like 5 a.m. And he's like, what the fuck? But he's the one who leads them to do the attack on the re-education camp. But his role's kind of interesting, because he becomes this place of identity with Erica because she is smitten with him, even though he's much older. And there's this wonderful scene where, they're back. This is the same scene where they go back to the Masons for the Christmas time. And they're playing football, and and Powers Booth gets tackled, and he's like, "Fuck, these like 18-year-olds taking me down," and I'm like 35, with his old man body. And Erica sits with him, and she's obsessed with his wife. Right? Tell me about her. Tell me about her. What was she like? How did you fall in love? And it's also interesting because Tony just stands to the side, like as a sentry guarding their conversation, like allowing this idea of how does life continue? How do we rebuild family through, oh, you fall in love, right? Let me know what that's like, because she's potentially, Erica and Tony, and trying to make their way to their grandparents' farm. We learn that they're likely were, resisted or were sexually assaulted. And so this reaching out to someone about love is important as an idea of a continuing of family, but of course it's not to last. And we finally have this ragtag takes its first knock as they're trying to deliver Colonel Tanner across the actual line of battle, and he dies. And Arturo, is it Arturo that dies? I think it's Arturo that dies there, right? And, this is the beginning. This is like a classic pivot. It's like, this is where things fall apart. And the worst of it that happens is they're betrayed. And they're betrayed by Daryl, who represents like the failure also of his father's like idea of civic life. So of course he's the one who's the patsy, and he goes to visit his father, and his father fucking turns them in.
Yeah, exactly. And he kind of doesn't know. And remember, he was also in The Outsiders. He was the jerk in The Outsiders too. So that was
that's right. Forgot about that.
But and he's kind of a believable character, and you kind of understand like he's between a rock and his hard place. And it's like, what's going to happen when you have this real situation? Like, some people are going to work with the enemy. Some people are going to want to save their own. Some people think, like their father, all is lost now. And so it's a little bit of like, do what you can to save yourself. And, that was kind of a believable part of this plot. And Daryl becomes actually a good character in that he represents part of the internal kind of workings that won't make this just a Rambo, we won Vietnam, watch him go and kill everybody. At least I'm thinking not First Blood, but the second one.
Yeah, Rambo 2.
This one is a little bit more like, no, it probably won't go that smoothly.
No, and it's sad because the way they learn this is, we've been introduced to the what is it, the Spetsnaz? This is like the Russian like commando unit through. Remember how I've talked about how, man, I would love to be like a character actor, extra like bad guy in TV shows? Well, that is Ron O'Neal. Like, he's who I wish I could have been. It's like an actor. This guy was like, a bodybuilder guy. He could speak Russian. So his Russian is actually really good in the film because he was fluent. And he was in Buck Rogers. He was in, multiple Western TV shows, everything. It's endless. And he plays this character of the person who's here to like fix the mistakes of Colonel Bello and his like Russian sidekick that are allowing these Wolverines, these kids to succeed. And they're the ones that plant the bug. It's like, if you're hunting a fox, you don't kill the pig, you go and become a fox. And so that's what they've done. They've turned Daryl into a fox, and they've bugged him, and they figure this out. And the sad thing is that they capture a Russian soldier, and they decide they have to execute both the Russian soldier and Daryl.
Yeah.
And we get one of the more famous lines as well from the film. And it's this justification. Like, Jed is fully transformed from like, I'm just trying to be your brother and do the right thing, to like, we've got to, he's executed the Russian in the Jeep early on, and he's, leads this bunch into becoming a proper guerrilla unit. But most importantly is in this moment, he's the one who has to carry out the execution, right? and his brother is breaking. He's like, no, what's going to make us different? Like, and I love the analogy. It's like the Russians love their children too. It's like, what makes us different? And what's the answer? And he says, we were here first,
We
right? Like,
live
this is
here.
our,
It's
we
like,
live here.
we live here. That's what's
Yeah.
different, and it makes you think about, like, Ukraine and the way
Yeah.
in which, like, there were Russian tanks in Ukraine where they had graffitied Wolverines on them, which is
Mhm.
insane when you think about,
It's
like,
totally
the
insane.
idea of this. But the other piece too is the whole guerrilla combat is also America dealing with how North Vietnam beat them. So,
Right.
like, how are we gonna win this? Do what the North Vietnamese did to beat us, which is so
Yeah.
weird when you think about it. There's so many odd pieces going through that kind of
Mhm.
match the logic and strained and strange thinking of Americans in the kind of post Vietnam era, when they realized actually we're not much of a superpower. There's some real problems with how we imagine ourselves, and there's a reckoning to come. But the 80s didn't reckon with it at all. They just said, no,
No.
actually, we are. That didn't really happen. Look the other way.
Well,
Look away.
yeah. I mean, definitely in films like Rambo 2, that's for sure. Rescuing
I would argue,
POWs
yeah,
is a way.
sure. I mean, there are definitely better ones like Platoon and stuff, but
Oh,
like
yeah.
there is a lot of that. Let's say, like, by and large,
Absolutely.
Vietnam is being reimagined in some real way.
Yeah. And some Chuck Norris movies, I think, cut in there as well.
MIA. Exactly.
Invasion USA,
That's
right? The
right.
real
That's the one
invasion.
I'm thinking of.
And so, it is the idea is like, so Jed can't do it, but Robert can. And Robert, who has lost all identity of like society, ultimately, he's like basically a sociopath at this point. He is 100%, bought the line of no more emotions, all vengeance, and he kills Daryl. And this is the end, really. And like, the Spatsnets is getting them, and they're homeless now. Their safety in the mountains is gone, and they get drawn into a trap and get gunned down by these crazy massive helicopters that were so unsafe according to the production units. They weren't allowed to fly them over any people. Back to the budget of this film. And as Tony bites it, and even Robert finally bites it as he yells Wolverines one more time, but this is a failed epithet at this point, and he gets gunned down. And it's reduced to just the four, Matt and Jed and Erica and Danny. And Matt's like, we have to create a diversion so you two can get away, to Erica and Danny. It's like, and it's really sad because basically Matt's admitting, like, he and Jed, they're spent, right? We've done the demands of our father, and it's murdering us, right?
Yeah.
And Jed finally cries again right before this scene too. He like pulls out his photo of his brother and their baseball uniforms, like, look what America was. Look what we were. We were simple little kids. And this is important because there is this goofy kind of eulogy by Danny at the earlier death of Arturo and the colonel. And he talks about this idea of what is it? It's so we can. I got to read this. Ba, 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 ba. That's the betrayal, the education camp. Oh, there's the attack. And they just basically talk about them, being little again, like being the idea of being children again, like something that we've lost and we can't have again. And that's the idea of this film. It's like he's trying to be a child again, Jed, finally. He's finally trying to reclaim that. He's like, this is too much for him. And it leads to the final attack on the headquarters in Calumet. And Jed is like, I love you, man. It's like, Matt's like, I know. And he's like, it's tough being brothers, isn't it? And we're making fun of it. But it does lead to their kind of attack. But the Spatsnets guy's too smart, and he guns down Matt, and Jed kind of guns him down, blah, blah, blah. There's like a classic final Mexican standoff, and they both get shot. And the final moment of Jed like pulling his brother, and trying to carry him, and they go back to a swing set, which is like on the nose as well, and it's in the snow, and he's trying to be a father to him. And it's like, he's like, I got you, and he starts calling him May instead of Maddie. And he's like, I got you, May. Daddy's going to be here. And he's allowing himself to finally be a child again. And it's really schmaltzy, but it's tearjerkery at the same time. And, this is this idea that this picture's been doing. It's like, we're going to have our kids be warriors if we need them to be, but they're all going to get dead. They're all going to get dead. They're not going to survive this.
Yeah.
I think Milius thinks that's the message, but I don't think that's what we actually got out of it. That's what's so funny.
There's no romanticism in it as it goes.
No.
And I think that was one of the things watching it as a kid. There's no romanticism. But I'll tell you, there is romanticism in the next show that's coming up on DS-106 Summer Camp. It's Radio Across Oceans with Clint Lalonde and Martin Weller. So while my friend here, MBS, and I are going to finish up, I am going to push you off to the land of good vinyl on DS-106 Summer Camp. Thanks for listening to us both as we went on and on about the Red Dawn, which we love. Am I right, MBS?
Yeah, and I think this is a good spot for us to end on too. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Ciao.
Bye-bye.